This edition of Tech Talk is brought to you in part by Telex, the interconnection company, owners and operators of 56 Marietta, the most network-rich co-location facility in the Southeast. Tag TV and Tag Radio. Technology now has a voice of innovation and information. Get it on www.tagtvonline.com. Her vision is physical and virtual places where all are invited to experiment, discover, create, commercialize, and shape the very future of digital, social, and multimedia of tomorrow. In little more than just a few months as executive director, she has already begun to connect universities, venture capitalists, entrepreneurs, and industry to create a robust, open innovation ecosystem to leverage and build upon existing world-class efforts across the state of Georgia. In fact, early last month, she organized a day-long Future Media Conference, the very first of its kind, that drew nearly 300 VIPs from as far as Canada, Ireland, Scotland, South Korea, Singapore, and from across the South, all to focus on both the opportunities and the challenges in this dynamic, transformational, digital-driven economy of tomorrow. Greetings, everyone. It's Tuesday, November 17th, 2009, and this is Tech Talk with Technology Association of Georgia President Tino Mantella. I'm your guest host, Frank Baia. Our month-long series on the digital media industry in Georgia continues as we speak with Renu Kulkarni, the recently appointed Executive Director, Future Media at the Georgia Institute of Technology. A global innovation and strategic alliance professional, Renu has deep understanding of the high-tech and consumer electronic marketplace with over 20 years of industry experience. Prior to joining Georgia Tech, Renu was Vice President, Technology Partnerships at Motorola, where she drove technology-based strategic relationships to achieve breakthrough innovation and business results. Notable alliances among industry, academia, and, in fact, countries included Microsoft, IBM, Sun, France Telco, British Telco, Stanford, MIT, Georgia Tech, South Korea, and Singapore. Georgia's digital media and entertainment industry, a look into the future for our current companies and the new visionary entrepreneurs that are rapidly making our state a leader in this growth industry of tomorrow. As we Tech Talk Future Media with Georgia Tech's Executive Director and Lead Evangelist in Future Media, Renu Kulkarni. Renu, welcome to Tech Talk.
Thank you.
Well, Renu, a lot of buzz, a lot of excitement. I know just recently you were involved in an initiative, an actual conference that was called Future Media, but I think that was the beginning of a whole lot more. Why don't we just kind of jump right in and let's talk a little bit about Georgia Tech's Future Media initiative. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Future Media is about creating what's next in digital, social, mobile, and multimedia. It's really the integration of all of those aspects, and it's a new collaborative initiative that was chartered to create a robust, open innovation ecosystem to really leverage all the great assets, all the great efforts that are already going on in the state of Georgia with institutions like Georgia Tech and SCAD and other universities, as well as all the leaders that we have in industry, the entrepreneurial environment. So it's really taking all the wonderful assets we already have and taking it up a level, if you will, and together creating what's next in what we're calling Future Media.
Now, it combines, again, as you're commenting, universities, corporations, venture capitalists, entrepreneurs, and government as well.
Absolutely. And, in fact, in preparing for the Future Media Conference that you mentioned, we found in just 90 days into this program, we engaged with 13 different organizations in the state of Georgia, including TAG, 17 different global industry players, many of whom were present at this conference and some of whom were sponsors, as well as nearly 20 groups in Georgia Tech itself and UGA, Emory, SCAD. So it really is the collection of great brains and great talent, great acumen that we have in this state.
You know, we both are aware there's been so many positive comments that have come out of the conference. I know one comment that was made by a local VC, which I was excited to hear, he flat said this is an incredible opportunity ahead of us. I think so much of what you guys have accomplished in terms of this particular event and the kickoff of this initiative is awareness. I mean, it's really letting people know just how big of an industry we already have and how big the opportunity is as far as the future evolution of it, both from an economic development standpoint and from an innovation standpoint. Maybe cover a little bit for our audience some of the types of organizations. You commented about a few, but let's go into a couple of the organizations and businesses that are involved with the program.
As I say, we've kicked off the Future Media Initiative to, as you say, bring awareness. And so who's involved right now is really, I think, scratching the surface. We want anyone not only in the state of Georgia and beyond to be involved. So currently, as I mentioned, we have 13 different Georgia organizations. So TAG, Atlanta Metro, the Creative Coast in Savannah are examples, the Georgia Economic Development, the Entrepreneur Society. So about, as I say, 13 of them. And as far as industry players, really we are reaching out to and want folks to be involved, both from small, medium, large-size companies. And obviously what they get out and what they put in is different based on their perspective. So, for example, large companies like Turner and NCR and Cisco may be interested more because they will get exposure to new ideas, new businesses, students, research to help their innovation pipelines, and at the same time, the folks that they're interacting with get exposure to real-world problems and can grow into larger-sized companies, get some scale. So there's really a win-win situation in terms of the types of organizations that are involved. The term I like to use is really the sum is greater than the parts. That's what this Future Media Initiative is about. We want to create a win-win-win situation for those of us in Georgia and those of us that emanate from and emanate to Georgia. So it really is a global perspective that we're taking.
So many of the, the non-professionals that are involved in this specific industry sector are probably not aware of the knowledge-based industry opportunities and the technologies that are involved. So as you begin to explore these things, I think you're actually making people much more aware that, quote-unquote, the entertainment business isn't just about creativity in terms of entertainment, but it's also about all of the digital technologies, applications, and computers and advancements and innovations that are going to be happening, are happening already, will be happening in the future. So what we're really talking about is jobs for Georgia and economic development in the long haul, and so much of what you're doing, I think, is benefiting that. And so our audience, I might mention right now, if you are interested, is there a website? I believe it is futuremediageorgia.com. Would that be the best place to make contact if you're interested in getting involved in some way?
Yeah, it's futuremediaga.com.
Okay, great.
And that's the place to go. And until we kind of build up our own future media assets in terms of the ways you can communicate with us, there's a communications person that's listed on the website as well.
Okay, very good. Let's talk a little bit now in terms of what's going to be key to the future of companies in this space, things like social, digital, and multimedia. Just how key is that to the future of companies as far as, quote-unquote, future media is concerned?
Well, it's very critical, and I want to pick up on some of the points you made earlier. When we use the word future media, not only is it including digital, social, mobile, multimedia, but it's also to emphasize that this is about how content is created, how it's distributed, and how it's consumed. And that really, that entire kind of continuum is what we're talking about. And that very paradigm is changing dramatically. For some industries, it's changing significantly. For others, it's evolving. But what does this mean to the future of companies? Well, it's changing and in some cases breaking business models. It's transforming how we communicate. It's transforming the speed at which we communicate and I think the multitasking that we do. So we are in the middle of an evolution, and what is clear is while we don't know where it all is going to lead in 7, 10 years and beyond, what is clear is I like to quote the words digital Darwinism from a study that Booz Consulting did, and that is we are going through an evolution, and some will survive, some will fail, and some will thrive. And industries from journalism to healthcare, energy, communications, computing are all reevaluating how they will adapt, how they will grow going forward in light of these significant changes.
Absolutely fascinating. I mean, just absolutely. What a perfect time for Georgia Tech to identify this as a niche and a need, and for you to get involved and to look at it with such a, I think, mosaic. You know, I think of evolving, and certainly, as you point out, the Darism and that kind of thing, but it's almost transformational. You know, we're at a point where we're seeing truly convergence fulfilled, and I think this area is the leader in that particular space. Maybe we can touch a little bit as we begin to close the interview on the next big thing, you know, the next big digital or social or multimedia technologies. What have you seen or uncovered?
That's a good question, and I would never attempt to answer the question of what is the next big killer application. I think that's a question that is
left up to the gods, huh?
That's right. It's right for anyone's guess. And but in terms of technologies, there are 4 that I think are key in shaping, again, how content is created and distributed and consumed. The first is video. Mobility is second. Location, and that is global positioning systems, is third. And advanced analytics is the fourth. Video, let me kind of go through each one. Video, 91% of network traffic by 2013 is expected to be video. Broadband, cloud computing, a term that many are familiar with, mobile networks are all, among others, are all working hard to plan for this, what I will say is killer content format. So video is most definitely a next big trend from a technology perspective. In terms of mobility, to me that's equally as important. We've certainly seen what's happened in the last 20-some years in terms of wireless and mobility, and I believe we're still in the very early stages of what that means for us. So today, for example, there are nearly 4 billion mobile devices. In some countries, people average 2 handsets per person. In others, villages share 1 mobile phone. And this means over half of the world's population has yet to use a mobile handset. And in fact, in emerging countries, it's been shown that for every 10% you increase mobile adoption, you also increase GDP by nearly 1%. So it's an untapped opportunity for not only the globe, but also for Georgia, for our citizens and for our companies that will deliver services wherever that might be. And then in terms of location, you see things like Wikitude, which is Wikipedia, but now on longitude and latitude basis. So clearly our world with things like Google Earth is being captured increasingly in a virtual fashion. So what does that mean? What kinds of applications can one imagine when you're able to mix the virtual world with the physical world? So location itself is a huge technology that can have some impact. And lastly, the advanced analytics. We live in an era of data overload. There's just so much information coming at us that it's difficult to make sense of it all. And so by some accounts, each of us as a worker wastes 30% of each of our days searching for something digital, email, article, video. And so advances in the way that you convert information into knowledge are going to be big.
You know, we've explored in past conversations and other interviews things like geospatial indexing and supercomputer animation and visualization and pixelization. And when you talk about analytics, I mean, we're not only talking about search, but we're also talking even propensity and being able to understand and translate some of the things that will be happening in the space. It's pretty fascinating, and as we mentioned earlier, on one side, the opportunities are virtually unlimited, and what the next big thing is almost an impossibility to identify. Let's close our conversation today, and maybe we talk about the next big thing, but let's talk about what's next as it relates to goals for the Future Media Initiative. Touch upon that with our audience.
Sure. As I mentioned, the goal is to make the pie bigger for all who participate in creating what's next, to attract investment in research, to experiment with advanced equipment, technologies, and to invite participants into the ecosystem, to really span the innovation cycle from experimentation to discovery to creation to commercialize, all to shape the future. And so we are, in the early stages, but we're beginning to put in programs and beginning to collaborate with many of the constituents I mentioned to together create what's next. So I would ask the question to all of us, as we did at the conference, is let's put our heads and our resources together and our assets together and create that next for us.
And again, that's futuremediaga.com to follow up on this interview and to get more information about the initiative and to make contact. We've been talking to Renu Kulkarni. Renu is the Executive Director of Future Media. Thank you for joining us on Tech Talk.